just watched me take several deep breaths if it went live faster than it told me. Anywho, hello, how are you? I hope the internet is going to cooperate. If you're wondering, is she in a new location again? Yes, she is. And this is actually my child. There's some like full circle energy of some sort happening because doing this from here is, ugh, that's probably true. I think my connection at this point is very unstable. Oh boy. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to go closer to the router, I think is what I need. That's enough for a little bit. This is probably gonna be a shorter live stream if I had. That's okay though. Take all the snacks and whatnot. Okay. Now I'm gonna come over here and hope that this gives me better internet. Oh shit. There we go. Okay. Here we are. There we go. Okay. It shows that my signal strength is much better now. So hopefully this is a connection that's stable. The unstable internet connection, honestly, like is kind of par for the course for me this morning. And that's why it may be a little bit of a shorter live stream. This week has been a lot. I don't know about you guys. How you doing out there? How's it going? Yeah, this week has been, well, we had the Cancer moon right before the Leo new moon, and I have you sitting on my lap, so if I bounce around a lot, I apologize for that. But yeah, those few days of the Cancer moon, I was pretty weepy, I think is the best way I can put it. And some pretty like shadow patterns basically of patterns that I'm familiar with inside myself, but getting to glimpse those in refreshed capacities as if like a helpful little reminder, like, hey, just letting you know that this is still in here in case you were curious. It's not fully healed yet, no big, but it's not. And so that's helpful time. And then we had the like real, let's not connection is unstable because I'm in my parents' living room. My brother is in the office, like just right over there. And this is the first time I've ever person. It's a little annoying. So an unstable connection sounds about right. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Jupiter retrograde today. And the piece, like as I've been doing these lately, I've been trying to discuss the essence of this transit. And with Jupiter retrograde, and I'm going to get into like the significations of why this all is like the essence of it, but it's like Jupiter retrograde is where we evaluate is the word I'm going to use. Have to change a single thing, but Jupiter retrograde is going to invite a reevaluation process where we get to go through what it is that we believe, and we sections. Okay. Tell me something I don't know. Please go check that out. The recording is there from this past Sacred Circle, and you watch back through, we've done 6 now. So if you want like the moment of like heart out. But we had a very helpful conversation about, it was specifically with somebody else, like do you and say I'm to give yourself time and to kind of give yourself time and space to let things roll. That like taking up or admitting weakness or whatever. And in the conversation, she was talking about how like her life these last couple years into her whole life is telling her that it's better to do it this way. And so she has changed her belief. She's had experiences that guide her to believe different. And so when we think about Jupiter, Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, and it is to do with, let's see, I just wrote down some Jupiter keywords here. So belief, faith, hope. Hope is one of my favorite. Expansion, risking, believing in yourself. Jupiter kind of sums up our philosophy about life and the world and kind of how it works. You can also get into dogmatism, which is just like kind of hitting other people over the head with your beliefs instead of letting them have their it's also to do with imagination. And I think imagination ties back to expand, like they both kind of lit up on my page here. I think they tie together because to expand that expansion in our mind in order to kind of claim it. Hello, Reen. So good to see you today. So imagination, sky is the limit. And the shadow start is you beliefs strong, feel like knowledge. Beliefs so strong up against lately in my shadow pattern. It kind of has to do with me using my beliefs and my version of the truth to guide how I approach other people and how I understand like their path forward instead of looking more to them as an individual and like how could I help them as an individual on their individual path, not necessarily just assume my truth is their truth. So we see Jupiter, all of this to do with our beliefs and our perspective on the world, our philosophies about life, is we're turning inward, and we're going to do that reevaluation process while Jupiter is retrograde, which begins yesterday at 8 degrees of Aries and will turn direct on November 23rd at 28 degrees of Pisces. So it'll make it 2 degrees back into Pisces. So fired up today. Oh boy, we're gonna get into it because yeah, there's like a lot of fire energy at the moment, and that's a lot of like kind of the obstacle course will that I've come through this week. Like I think a lot of it has to do with fire energy, and Jupiter is one of the rulers of, well, yes, I should say it is the ruler of Sagittarius, and it also happens to rule Pisces. I think I already said that. But Jupiter itself is a bit of a fiery planet because again, it's about having like taking a risk to believe yourself, to believe in your own felt experience of can be so strong. They flip personalized knowledge. I guess I don't mean that, but what was I saying? Oh, so changing our beliefs. This is the part I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about because while Jupiter retrograde is going to invite us into this process of reevaluating our beliefs, like I said, nobody's got to change a single thing. If you get to the end of your reevaluation and you're like, my beliefs, they work for me. I'm good. I'm good. I like the way my life is. Everything is working out for me. I'm happy with all of these different things. I'm going to keep on believing what I believe. If you are dissatisfied by any of the sectors of your life, Jupiter retrograde is a powerful opportunity to kind of like take this bigger picture, blue sky kind of viewpoint, like that 40,000 foot view almost, and look at the connections between what you believe and what you're experiencing, and not just that there is a connection or that, like kind of to say that there is a connection, I guess, like putting it out there that maybe there is one, maybe. Um, I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about even like what are beliefs, because I think that's a word that is easy to gloss over as like, I know what that means. And knowing that I was going to talk about this, I've been kind of thinking about it a lot this week. And one of the main pieces of foundation that I want to throw in here is from Abraham Hicks, Esther Hicks channeling Abraham, and a word, like a line that she says over and over and over again in her material, so much that I've absorbed it as my own belief, is that beliefs are just thoughts you keep thinking. Beliefs are just thoughts that you keep thinking. So when we talk about changing our beliefs, what we're really talking about is changing our habits of thought. We're talking about changing the thoughts that you think on a regular basis. That's changing your beliefs. So, for example, like back before I started daily gratitude practice, I had a lot of beliefs around the injustices of the way that I was treated in the world. Like the injustice of my family not understanding me, the injustice of my work not seeing or appreciating me, the injustice of my partner not giving me what I needed from them, the injustices. Oh my gosh, such overwhelming injustices. And when I started my gratitude practice, over time, like it doesn't happen in a day, right? We don't become that negative. We don't form any belief in a day because beliefs are just thoughts you continue to think. So it takes a long time to form a belief, to form a habit. And if you practice something different for long enough, you'll form a different habit. Like if you read like the leadership books, they say like it takes 21 days to form a habit. Well, Jupiter's going to go retrograde for like 5 months. Oddly enough, it turned retrograde, like stationed retrograde on July 28th, which was the Leo new moon. And then it's going to station direct on November 23rd, which is the Sagittarius new moon. Like, what are the chances that it would line up so exactly with those days? And the stationing direct part that like Jupiter is the ruler of Sagittarius. So the day that Jupiter stations direct, we're having the sun and the moon have a new moon in Sagittarius. Like, tell me that's not going to be something profound that gets downloaded into us. I'm so excited. Um, so this is like one of those opportunities. Like we have a lot of planets turning retrograde. Already there's several planets retrograde, and there's several more going in the next little while. I'm going to do a retrograde update here in not too long, but this retrograde as a word kind of has like a I would be honest and say awful connotation in the astrological community. It incites a lot of fear in general of like things are going to blow up and things are going to like go wrong and all of that. But all retrograde is an opportunity to turn inward and to be with yourself and to look at what is going on in your world, in your inner world, not the outer world. And I think the most frustration comes from retrogrades when we continue on paying attention to the outer world. And that's where all of these hiccups and breakdowns and miscommunications and misunderstandings, they're all happening in the outside world. And if we would turn inward during the retrograde, like it's asking us to and inviting us to, we kind of step off the path where all of those things are going wrong when we turn inward inside of ourselves. And this is just one more layer, right? One more planet that'll be retrograde. By the time we get to October, like for most of September, there's 6 planets in retrograde. So this is a very like good time to get extra introverted, like to catch up on your alone time, to catch up on your journaling and your self-exploration, especially with like this beliefs process kind of coming to the surface. Like earlier this week when I was very first starting prepping for today, I I made a document on my Google Drive called My Beliefs. And then all week long, as I've been like doing other stuff, like popping in and out of whatever content or conversations or whatever, I'm making notes and literally making notes back onto this document of my beliefs. What are they? And that has been a very fun exercise because I don't know that I've ever gotten so specific about what do I believe. And by that, again, I mean, what are the thoughts that I think over and over and over and over, and the perspectives where I'm certain, where I feel certain about things. Um, yeah, what are those? What do I believe? I mean, like, really, like, I don't know. I don't know, like, trying to call that up off the top of your head, I don't know. And so it was in a moment where actually, I take that back. I made the document using 3 beliefs that came to me, like, in a journaling session maybe, like, a week ago, and so I only had 3. That was, like, all that came through, and I was like, "Well, I know that's not even close to all of it, but yeah, I do believe these things." And then, like, over the, like, last couple weeks, like, I've gone or week or however long ago that was, I've gone back to that page and, like, filled in more, so that page got full, and that's when I made the document on Google Drive, and so then I've been, like, adding to it over the last few days. Um, and I think I'm gonna, like, refine it. Obviously, it's a very rough draft at this point, but refine it into something that I can post on my website or, like, into social media type content or something because, again, I feel like the clearer we are on what we believe, what is true at the core of who you are, the essence of the flame that burns inside of you, when you are clear on that and that's what you show to the world, that's what you get in return. So, this exercise of going inward and reevaluating our own beliefs, AKA the thoughts that we think on a regular basis, is absolutely productive and constructive and hopefully revelatory in terms of what is your soul here to do? You know, like I've been talking about this a lot lately, and I have a couple Matt Kahn videos on the live stream plep playlist, prep playlist for this time that are very good. That are very similar to that video I released recently, a message about injustices and what you can do about it. Because, like, what he was talking about, I think it was in the video called, like, a response to violence or something like that. Um, he's like, the effect of violence is twofold, like, or two options, I guess. The first option is that it beats you down into becoming apathetic and saying, like, the world is screwed up anyway, like, why should I care? Apathy. Or it can it can sink into the core of who you are, and it can cause you to get up off the couch and do something about it. So these are the two options of, like, there isn't just having to stand back in horror and shock at the things that go on in the world. We can truly do something about it. But again, like, depending on how that lands inside of you, if there's resistance to it, if it feels like, no, I can't, is what it's like what you say in response, that's your belief. That's like your belief that you can't do anything about it. I believe I can do something about it. I personally believe you can do something about it. But me believing it doesn't help you, right? So that's the part where this Jupiter retrograde is a great place to look at, like, where is our resistance to us being a part of the solution? You look around the world and there's so many things that are, like, literally traumatizing just even to look and see that it's going on. And, like, what Matt Kahn said, I think in the second video of his I watched this morning was like, literally find the thing that you find the most traumatizing and find an organization that's on the ground trying to solve that thing and give your life force to it with everything that you have. It's like we can never, as individuals, we can never solve all the problems of the world, but we can pour our energy into the bucket that means the most to us and finding clues to, like, what is that? Like, what is that cause? What is that thing that's worthy of your life force? Like, that's again where I feel like our beliefs can tell us a lot. And one of the things that I believe in strongly enough to pour my life force into it is self-development, self-empowerment, self-awareness, self-introspection. It changed my life. It changed who I am on the surface. Like, I think the core of me was always there, but there was so much wounding and unprocessed emotion that I just, like, couldn't the core of me couldn't reach the surface. And through turning inward and truly prioritizing my relationship with myself and taking good care of myself, it literally changed my life. it gave me the charge on my battery that let me say things like, I believe I'm part of the solution. While I know I can't solve everything, I know I can solve something. If I focus into something specifically enough, I know I can make an impact on it. And I didn't used to talk like that. I used to be so tired and so hurt and so invisible and so hungry for anybody, literally anybody, to see me and recognize that I was good and valuable. And I needed that because I didn't recognize that I was good or valuable. And so this process, this journey of getting to know myself and fall with myself, like it changed the whole trajectory of my life and literally gave me the power to be able to make a positive influence in this world. And my other brother just, oh no, there's see, this is what's weird about my dad just got home from his doctor's appointment. Yeah. See, now I'm like lightheaded. I'm so nervous. That was a rush. Oh my gosh, that reminds me of a word I learned yesterday. Flooding. It's an emotional term. It's an emotional experience. I don't think it's an actual emotion itself. It can happen with lots of different emotions, but the sensation of flooding, it's pretty self-explanatory. Like right now, I seriously got lightheaded. My neck and my face is hot, like flooded with like adrenaline and nerves and like sitting in my childhood home doing this, like so bizarre. So bizarre. Anyways, flooding. Yeah, it was like a thing where, again, it comes back to that. Do you believe you should fight it out in the moment, or do you believe that it's okay to like take a rest? Because if you're flooded, like basically the definition of flooded is you are beyond the point of being able to have a conversation where you like are able to represent yourself. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, flooding. And what she said in the book, this was an Atlas of the Heart, Brene Brown's latest book, where she was describing flooding, and that it was, I'm pretty sure, I don't have it next to me, but I'm pretty sure it was in the chapter where we go when our hearts open, that like flooding almost like is a sign of an open heart. Like the fact that you're flooding means that you're like, at least your emotional valve is open. And I'm like, yeah, that's a glass half full perspective if I ever heard one. Um, and then, oh, what else was I gonna say? It basically takes your like your executive functions, like your ability to like think and process and decide and whatever, it takes those offline. And the effect of chronic flooding can be that you dread communication, or if there's somebody that always floods you when like if it's your boss or it's your partner or your ex or whatever, like, when I deal with this person, my emotions like crank up to 100 in like a half a second flat. And as she was talking about that, I was like, yeah, I definitely have some of those in my life. And it's so true that like when you chronically flood in communication with the same person, I know I definitely start like avoiding that person instead of my old self, like instead of learning how to cope with the emotions, instead of giving myself compassion in that moment to say, like, I need a minute. Like, okay, let's take a quick 15 and or a quick 30 or a quick hour and we'll come back to this. I need a minute. She gave several good lines that I wrote down and can't remember off the top of my head, but she had several good lines about how you might like basically press pause on the situation so that you can go and kind of like do your emotion management where you move that energy that's flooded into your system. Because that's something about emotion in general, and I've heard this from like a few different studies now, is like when you have an emotional trigger like inside your body, the research shows, like, as far as, like, the adrenaline that gets released or the cortisol that gets released or whatever, like, whatever hormones or whatever gets released when you experience the emotion, that has, like, a physiological effect that lasts for about 90 seconds, so, like, a minute and a half, and that's all. So, like, that means that, like, if you can stay grounded, like, in the eye of the storm for, like, 90 seconds and don't go into the spiral of thoughts and blaming and judgments and hating on yourself or pointing the finger at somebody else, like, if you can just literally experience the rush of energy for 90 seconds, it's over. And if it lasts longer than 90 seconds, then you took the trip. Like, that's I hate to say it, but that's basically how it works. So, like, I was listening on this podcast where the lady was like, "No, no, no," like, because I know I read that email that one time and I was mad for 4 days, 4 days worth I was mad. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it only lasts for 90 seconds, so what does that mean? If it actually lasts for all day or for 4 days or a year or the rest of your life, what does that mean? It means you're still thinking about it. It means that you think about that email again and it triggers another rush of flooding, and now you got 90 more seconds that you need to wait it out. And then don't think about it. But if you do think about it, there's another rush. You're flooded again. There's 90 more seconds, so you got to wait it out. So that is like revolutionary to me as far as like emotions are so temporary, so temporary. And if we cannot get sucked in to the sensation itself, if we can allow like the charge to come out of it, then we can hopefully center back into our own love, our own self love, our own love for the other person that we're dealing with in that situation, whatever the case is, or even just a personal value for love. Like me personally, like I want to treat humans and every creature really with love and respect that is just given at face value. You don't have to earn it from me. You don't have to prove anything to me. That's just how I want to treat you. So when I get triggered and somebody says something that I find upsetting or does something that I find upsetting, I know that right then is not the time to decide what I'm going to do about it, what I'm going to say about it, whatever. It's like there is space for the pause that is simply riding the wave of uncomfortable emotion. And that again, like it saves relationships, it saves like you beating up on yourself because again, like if you take the spiral of like, and I see in the chat too, like, or the thing is still happening. And that is, yeah, that's like a really interesting situation because again, like every situation is going to be different. But if there's something happening to you that is triggering you and bringing up something that hurts or is uncomfortable, deeply uncomfortable, what do you believe that means? That's a really good question as far as Jupiter retrograde, and we're, invited to reevaluate our beliefs. Like when somebody triggers you, what do you believe it means? And if you're in a situation where somebody is triggering you over and over and over, again, what do you think it means? Um, I think those are good questions to explore because it's an interesting concept to think about someone triggering you repeatedly to where you can't get out from under it. Like, what are the dynamics of that situation? And maybe that it teaches us something about who we are or what we're choosing or what we believe we deserve. Because without knowing specifics or any of that, and I'm sure there's situations out there that are going to be different from this, but like Like, if you're in a situation where you're triggered over and over and over again, like, eventually the answer is to stand up for yourself and to change the outcome. Or another example I can think of is if you're looking at things in the world that are triggering you. So, like, for example, political, civil unrest of all sorts is happening everywhere on the planet, it seems. And looking at that is very upsetting. And it's not over yet, it's still going on. And so, if that's if it's something like that, where it's, like, not your personal issue, like, it's something that's happening out in the world, it's not something that's happening up close to you, I would be curious to know, we're kind of on a theme here, why do you believe you need to look at that thing? Why do you believe you need to focus on that? If it's upsetting to you, why do you believe you should continue to look at it? Instead of, just throwing it out there, instead of looking at something that when you focus on it, it helps you to feel better and better and better. Um, you know, do you believe that you should be informed? Do you believe that, to turn your back on people's suffering is cruel or something to that effect? I mean, what do you believe around why you should look at the thing that's upsetting to you? Um, so yeah, those are all good questions. Let's see, what else? Oh, I was watching, I forget which video this was, but I know it's on the prep playlist for sure. Some different names of Jupiter going retrograde. So this was what I started to say earlier, like, retrograde has such a negative connotation, but if any of them are gonna be positive, it truly is Jupiter. It's a benefic planet, like maybe the most benefic planet, and when it goes retrograde, there can be unexpected gains in things that have been waiting to blossom, and I loved how the person talked about it. Again, I wish I could remember who that was, but, the way they talked about it was like, that could be, you've been doing the work behind the scenes on your business and all of a sudden it kind of takes off in a way, or you've been really doing the healing work and all of a sudden you recognize that, like, you are experiencing an expansion of your self-confidence or your self-worth or something like that. It could also be, you know unexpected gains and things that have been waiting to blossom. It could be you've been allowing yourself to carry a lot of stress, and the unexpected gain could be a brand new stress to add to the pile. Um, and that, those seeds were kind of nurtured by the tolerance for stress that was allowed, and that like attracts like. And so there's unexpected gains. It could be lots of different things, but when it's Jupiter, we can absolutely trust that it is helping us to clarify our beliefs. Because again, if what you manifest is more stress to add to your pile of stress, you got to wonder, why do you believe that it's okay for you to be stressed on a daily basis? Like, all the time. Like, I used to operate at, like, a stressed out level all the time. It was, like, just kinda normal for me, and then every little thing that happened was, like, the straw that broke the camel's back, and eventually, like, at this point, I kinda choose to not be stressed. It's kinda that Pisces perspective of, like, I'm gonna look at everything is always working out for me, and I'm gonna go with the flow, and I'm gonna do what I can personally instead of railing against all of the things that are completely outside of my control. Mm, yeah. Yeah, so I'm looking because it's happening in the world at large and in my own body, and people are dying without care. There are countless injustices in this world, and my mom just got home. She'd go to the office. Um, Countless injustices in the world, and I describe these as like a hole in the bottom of your boat. That, like, as long as you're looking at abstract injustice and terror and awfulness, your boat will sink and sink and sink and sink, and you cannot shovel out the water fast enough to keep up with how awful the world is. And that isn't to say that there's nothing that you can do about it, but you do have to withdraw your attention from the abstract suffering so that you can focus on a specific piece that is most meaningful to you and closest suited to you, like your own personal skill set. And from there, with the hole in your boat plugged, you can stop shoveling water, stop trying to keep your head above water. Your boat is now airtight and solid and ready to carry you wherever you want to go. Point it at the issue that gets you most excited to solve and go for it. Do it. Start doing something about it. And while you can't solve every single issue in the world, like if none of us do this, nothing gets solved. Like, so unless we're willing to, like, forego everything else so that I can focus on this one, and I'm gonna give my heart and soul to this one, and I'm gonna do everything I can, and at the end of the day, every single day, I'll know that I did all I can. For the thing that I devoted myself to, I did everything I could do for it, and that'll let me sleep at night. But just binging on abstract injustice and awfulness, like, there's no end. There's literally no end to that, and at a certain point, you almost have to make, like, a strategic decision, like, it's an insolvable problem. So, like, again, from my overly practical sometimes nature, it's like, that doesn't even make sense to focus everything you got on a problem that's not solvable, as in, like, abstract suffering. Like, to reduce suffering, we need to fix this thing that causes suffering, and this thing that causes suffering, and this thing that causes suffering. And, like, I picked mine, and every once in a while, I still get kinda distracted on, like, all of the different ways that people suffer in this world, and I have to pull myself back to, "Nope, this one. This one is my responsibility, and the rest of these are gonna be there for somebody else's heart and soul who's a perfect match to that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and I'm gonna work on mine. I'm gonna give it everything, everything that I have." And again, these are personal thoughts, personal choices, personal beliefs. I believe that every soul is responsible for helping make this world a better place. So pick a starting point and get going, you know? Like, that's all I'm saying. Yeah. Mhm. So yeah, fire energy. Um, that's it can be hard to focus. That's like a great point to bring it back around, and I think I'll maybe tie it up here. Um, is like still going. Um, yeah, when you get so fired up about things and you care so much, yeah, that's sorry I misunderstood too, because yeah, I do hear what you're saying about feeling it personally in your body. Um, like, I went on a kick here a while back when I was preparing for the US Pluto return video, where I was looking into, like, the history of freedom, really, and slavery as part of that, and these aren't even current. Well, it still is so current, and I think that's where it was, like, especially upsetting, is the systemic part that still exists today based on these systems that we built that are so rooted in awful things, and I was, like, inconsolable for days, like, crying and crying and crying and crying for days, and it's like, yeah, when you go there and you soak up the energy of whatever it is that you give your attention to, it's there to process. Like, I've been talking a lot lately about empathy with my close people, and, like, how do you kinda asking the question, how do you between, like, what is truly your emotion and what you soaked up from the world around you? And that question is interesting for sure, and, like, I've got a lot of mileage out of that conversation so far, but at the end of the day, it doesn't totally matter, because if you soak it up through your attention, it's yours to process, it's close enough to yours. So that's where like abstract suffering can become personal suffering like real quick, that like almost so quick that you don't even recognize that, like, again, this like, I was gonna say isn't yours, or is it? You know? Because crying for those days over slavery and all the ways that humans have mistreated each other, it felt a little bit like crying the tears of my own past life suffering and transgressions, like my own experiences of being the powerless one or being the powerful one and misusing it or abusing it. Like crying those tears through that abstract suffering, like relieved something for me personally, that the abstract suffering of the history of slavery like helped unlock healing on my journey. So, is it yours? Maybe it is. Maybe that abstract suffering that you open yourself up to sometimes, like, and I know I keep using that word. I know you said that's not what it is, but like there's so much of that where we see on the world or we see on the news things that are going on in the world. And like it truly can be heartbreaking. It truly can be paralyzing to think like it's like kind of a helpless feeling. And again, like that can manifest into personal suffering so fast. Like there's a whole movement right now in China called Let It Rot, where like the younger generation has basically given up on even trying to be successful. Like they're not not trying to work, they're not trying to buy things, they're not trying to like they're just going to let it rot. And I'm like, that's one way. That's definitely an option and it's on the table. And anybody who wants to take that road, I say go for it. But at the same time, like mostly for my own fun and creative expression, I personally enjoy coming up with solutions to things and always have like enjoyed solving problems. And so for me, it feels so much more productive to point my energy and my effort at things that I absolutely can do something about. And sometimes, like, even, yeah, even things within our own lives or in our own bodies, even like it feels so personal, and yet it's still out of your hands. And it's like, if it's out of your hands, keep it out of your head too. Point your head at something that you can solve, that you can do something about. Ooh, interesting. The average life expectancy of autistic adults in my state is 40 years old. I have lost so many people for decades. I've already done my angry years. I am bringing only love to what I do now. So if you're only bringing love to what you do now, what's the problem? Because like, yeah, you're right. That's a perfect example of a problem that is worthy, I would say, of your heart and soul being poured into it. Is like that's a very specific, very measurable um place to dump your energy and your focus, as far as like, how can I create better quality of life for this population, so that I'm assuming that like the low life expectancy is like by suicide. I don't know, maybe you could say more about that as far as like what the solution is. Um, but yeah, I mean, very similar to, I'm not going to say it's like the same, but why I do the work that I do, because I know from someone suffering with my own mental health for years and feeling like the world didn't understand, it really does light my fire to come into the public and talk so openly about my own experiences, if for no other reason, so that somebody who's struggling right now knows that they're not alone, knows that it's not permanent, that it is temporary, and that there's always things that you can do to get better, even if it's only little by little by little. Yeah, yeah. There's like there's like a whole world of potential out there, and every single person who's here is needed. Every single person who's here has some kind of uniquely brilliant contribution to make. And finding what yours is gives your life a sense of fulfillment that I personally like. I've never found anything as satisfying as feeling like I'm living out the reason that I came here. That like every single struggle I've ever had has been worth it because it lets me help people who are now struggling with similar things. So there is absolutely a light at the end of the tunnel, even if I'm the only one that believes that. I do believe it. So that's, it helps me. Interesting. I'm very high need autistic, mostly nonverbal, alone in the world. It's neglected health more than mental health. See, and like, again, kind of like what I'm saying, like, I, I can't imagine you're the only one that is sitting there feeling like you're limited in this way. I'm sure that those limitations that you're perceiving are extremely relatable to a whole population of people that are living on this planet. And so even just sharing your experience in whatever creative way you can come up with, again, it gives hope to other people. And when you start like giving hope to other people, there's something about like lighting other people up that, again, maybe that's my Leo moon talking, like maybe that's uniquely motivating for me personally, but definitely like uplifting other people gives me a sense of, while there may be a shit ton of darkness in this world, I myself am shining my light as brightly as I can possibly figure out how to shine it, and that's literally all I can ever do. So at the end of the day, everybody else's journey is their own business. It's not my business. That's not why I do what I do. I do what I do because I was born for a reason, and there's something in this world that is uniquely mine to contribute to. And getting to make that contribution feels so good. It's not, yes, it does help other people, and the helping other people is really, really satisfying, but, like, that's not where the engine of motivation comes from behind, like, at least the work that I'm doing, and I have, in my mind, like, ambition to help. I mean, if I'm being 100% honest, every single person that's on the planet today or will be throughout the course of my life, like, that's my audience. That's who I'm trying to benefit, and at the same time, I'm not doing it for them. I'm kinda doing it for me and my own enjoyment and my own healing journey and my own sanity of feeling like my suffering wasn't for nothing, you know? All the suffering I've ever done, all the tears I've ever cried, all the heartbreak I've ever felt, it was for something. It's productive, it's useful. It's useful as soon as you find out how to help other people with it. And that's something that, you know, it takes a while to tune into that, no doubt about it, but like I said, like, for me, a daily gratitude practice reshaped my whole entire life. I credit that as kind of like the beginning of where I started with, um, finding my way to a self-empowered outlook is how I'll say that. I hope you seem to come across wrong. I don't I I mean, technically, I guess I can't say because I don't know what's inside of you. Yeah, I'm sorry if I made you feel like that, but that's interesting that you think that. I make video poetry art. That sounds really interesting. Do you have anything published that you could share with us? I would love to check it out. Um, yeah, yeah. Like I kind of just got a vision of you teaching other people how to make video poetry art, or like, their version of video poetry art. Like people who feel like they run a million miles deep but don't have the words to express who they are. Again, you're not the only one on this planet who's living that life. And if you were able to get even one other person to feel like even just one more millimeter empowered in their own ability to express themselves, because I don't know, like, how did you remove your roadblocks? Like, how did you get from trying to use words, like feeling like I'm not as good at expressing myself in words as other people, to I'll make video poetry art? Like, how did you get there? That's amazing. And again, like, how you removed those barriers is probably a lot like how other people are going to remove those same barriers. So, again, I hope that you do share your experience as much as you possibly can, um, in the hopes that it is empowering for you and could even be a smidgen empowering for somebody else. Ooh, interesting. Hmm. If all is one and separation is the illusion, then no matter what we feel is part of the one. We define a thing as suffering based on our programming. Acceptance of what is can be liberating. And that, let's see, check this out. Maddie sent me this yesterday. I'm going to read it to you. It's called The Parable of the Taoist Farmer. Farmer in ancient China who owned a horse. "You are so lucky," his neighbors told him, "to have a horse to pull the cart for you." "Maybe," the farmer replied. One day he didn't latch the gate properly and the horse ran away. "Oh no, that is terrible news," his neighbors cried. "Such bad luck." "Maybe," the farmer replied. A few days later, the horse returned, bringing with it 6 wild horses. "How fantastic! You are so lucky," his neighbors told him. "Maybe," the farmer replied. The following week, the farmer's son was breaking in one of the wild horses when it threw him to the ground, breaking his leg. "Oh no," the neighbors cried. "Such bad luck all over again." "Maybe," the farmer replied. The next day, soldiers came and took away all the young men to fight in the army. The farmer's son was left behind. "You are so lucky," his neighbors cried. "Maybe," the farmer replied. When we interpret a situation as an opportunity or a disaster, it shapes the way that we respond. But the Taoist farmer shows that we can never truly know how a situation is going to turn out. There are no intrinsic opportunities or threats. There is only what happens and how we choose to respond. In which case, does it make sense to look for the opportunities in every situation? Are you facing a crisis at the moment? How might you turn it into an opportunity? I'll send you guys this link or put it in the chat here for you. There we go. Oh, yeah. I had never heard that before. So I was so grateful to Maddie for sharing it with me and for you all for taking it in here. I think that is a spectacular place to wrap up today. Like I said, we're keeping it a little shorter. Um, yeah, it's an exciting time. It's a very turbulent time. I drew the Tower card for this morning's talk. There is a lot of change and uncertainty on the horizon, but there is no such thing as an intrinsic opportunity or threat. So when we face anything, are we seeing the opportunity or are we seeing the threat? So I hope for you, you'll see the opportunities in what it is that you're facing. And until next time, I hope you take such good care of yourselves, and so will I. Okay, bye.